Space specialized incubator that provides Swedish startups and SME companies with access to financial, technical, and educational support from the European Space Agency within the framework ESA Incubation Business Centers. I have a master's degree from Lund University in the geomatics sector, and I co-founded a startup in 2016 called Vultus that aimed to eliminate waste in farming using satellite imagery-based system for fertilizer recommendation. Today, we'd like to talk about agtech, digital agriculture, connectivity, and everything in between. When we talk about space, people will immediately think about Mars mission, the International Space Station, and so on. But if we look into the name of the session today, we're talking about downstream space. And to clarify what is like downstream and upstream, if we think about the slide in front of us, we have the two sector, which including the upstream to my left, with dealing with the like sending object to space, space exploration, space mission. One can think about the moon mission, Mars mission, International Space Station, rocket launching, satellite like launching, and everything related to that. You can think about the environment in the space and how astronaut can, or human could live like in a space environment, like on the space station itself, or like on the future settler communities in Moon or Mars. And then we can think also about which kind of environment have to be like developed for them in a capacity of food and waste management and so on. While it came to the downstream, we could think about all the application that to take an advantage of the upstream technology. One can think about GPS and navigation. One can think about satellite telecommunications, satellite TV broadcasting, meteorological information from satellite, and of course, Earth observation imageries, which is my area of interest, clearly. And if we think about satellite imagery, I have two examples here of like of the same picture from the same satellite taken in the same day, where heavy snow was covering here the whole region in southern Sweden, while like you can see the desert in northern Sudan with like some pivotal agricultural schemes. Downstream space is a way where a lot of growth is happening, because startup and SME who want to utilize the downstream space tech, they don't need the same amount of financials starting point. They're not facing the same like technological, logistical, and financial challenges that face in the upstream. One also can think about, are we living in the new space era? Are we living in the new space race? That could be the reality if we're thinking about the world's most richest men are wanting to put us on Mars. We think about investors pouring like billions of dollars into the sectors. Nations are investing in the space like never before. An example of that would be the program I'm working with, the ESA big program that the European Union, through the European Space Agency, they created the Copernicus program for Earth monitoring. And that included like the space infrastructure itself, the satellite, the data processing center here, but also the promotion of a startup and different like entity that can take advantage of this data, a vast amount of data. We're talking about terabytes of data coming down every day. And to promote this kind of using of this data and creating commercial viable application out of it. If we want to move to the next slide, then we can talk about what to do with the space and with agriculture. I'm using satellite imagery in this and manipulation of them in this slide coming from Sentinel-2 and being manipulated by Sentinel Hub Playground application, and it acquired also in February 2021, just a couple days ago. If we think about Earth observation, we think about an eye on Earth from the sky. An eye, or like a collection of eyes that could look into the globe all the time, usually like within the daytime, and giving us a global coverage of our Earth, giving us like a field level details and up-to-date information. We're talking about a revisit time of like 1 to 2 days where the satellite come over your field or your house in case of Sentinel satellite, or we're talking about a daily revisit when it comes to other satellites, and or some in some like case of like a private satellite, there is a possibility of tasking the satellite, asking for specific information there. We can go through this more. Satellite imagery provide farmers with not only farmers manager with an actionable information that help them to monitor the health of their crops, help them to have an early warning system regarding like a problem like drought or like pest infestation or plant stress. And that also not going to be during only the crop cycle, but also could be used before the crop cycle by looking after harvest and before seeding by studying the soil like properties. Another interesting application of satellite imagery could be used to look into the what's so-called variable let application, which in opposite of the common practice of blanketing the field with the same amount of fertilizer everywhere, that using satellite imageries for adding the specific amount of fertilizer needed in each part of the field when is needed, and that is provide great benefits for the farmer in terms of financial saving, and also provide like a great like benefit for the environment by saving using those kind of chemical fertilizers. I don't want to talk a lot about the tech in this sense, but we also can talk about like lesson I learned while working within the ag tech, lesson I learned while like running or being the research and development director in our startup regarding the agriculture sector. Our agricultural knowledge is transferred through generations, and the farmers, they know how to adapt to the local environment, to adapt to changing the local environment. So the first step in developing any like agriculture solution based on new technology is to learn from the local community, to talk to the farmers and to incorporate them in your development process. The top-down approach of like creating something in the lab or the incubator and like in our laptop and coming and trying to push into the farmer is not applicable. People will resist that kind of change. And opposite to the notion that farmers are resistant to technology, the farmers are not resistant to technology. Farmers are resistant to solution, ready-made solution that not incorporating their actual needs and not taking their own knowledge into the development of these solutions. One also can think about the scale and the mobility when thinking about solution developed for agtech. I'm thinking about the drone technology, but I'm quite sure our co-speakers, Rose, will talk more about drone as they're working with it. But thinking about when you're collecting data using drone, one can also think about how far the drone could reach and how far your team could be traveling to collecting information and so on.
Hi, Abdallah.
Sorry.
Yes, I think I'll stop you right there. I think when you've mentioned around drone technology and possibly toss the mic to Rose, but I'm sure I'll come back to you, especially around how these two can integrate together, especially on the downstream satellite imagery and the role of drones. But I'll pass the mic to Rose Funja, who leads AgriInfo. AgriInfo, in short, is a precision ag tech platform that offers full stack solutions for high precision aerial surveillance for farmers. In this context, they're able to support farmers to avert crop yield losses, possibly due to insects, crop disease, and other hazardous environmental aspects. And I'll just toss it to Rose to provide more context, as I ask Abdallah to stop sharing as I share on my end. Maybe we'll probably come back to her in the interest of time. Maybe I'll just pass it over to you, Ivan, just to provide context, building on what Abdallah is saying, maybe how on the fintech side, you're leveraging on data to serve small scale businesses and individuals in communities, and basically how we can, how you're seeing it from a fintech perspective.
I'd like to just give a brief overview about Tala, and I will then go into how we are using various forms of technology to enable access. So the inspiration and story behind Tala lies in our founder, Shivani Soroya, seeing an emerging trend. She saw an emerging middle class rising across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. But the challenge was that they were entering a financial system that was not equipped to meet their needs. And we looked at over 1.7 billion adults who still remain unbanked, and over 3 billion adults that lacked formal credit records. And these are sort of two interlinked issues, right? Without formal credit records, you might be able to open a bank account, but you won't be able to access credit. And so as a result, we realized that perhaps this is why a large portion of the global population remains unbanked. And so Tala effectively came in to create a financial ecosystem. And we like to think of ourselves as one of the world's first neobanks, so digital banks that has been created to serve the unbanked. And we have a simple mission to enable and accelerate financial health for the underserved globally. We actually began in Kenya about now almost 7 years ago, and have since expanded this across the world, and I'll sort of go into that. But customers are able to access a credit product if they have an Android device. Our use of Android and selection of Android was very intentional. It really allowed us to offer an instant credit product for customers, where about 85% of our customers are able to access credit in less than 10 minutes between downloading the app on the Google Play Store and receiving credit within their mobile wallets. Unlike many of the traditional competitors, we did not require customers to have any paperwork, as we leveraged the data that we could access on their devices. We didn't require them to have any credit history. We have increasingly personalized the offerings through to them. We have differentiated ourselves through transparent terms, and have become quite inclusive with well over 4 million customers served to date. So this sort of gives you a sense of what the user interface looks like. It's a very intuitive user experience designed from the customer up. We try and make our application exceptionally simple. It's available in multiple languages across the various countries we operate. There's really no waiting period. The moment you apply and submit, you get your decision immediately. And as mentioned earlier, you disperse into a mobile wallet within less than 10 minutes. So the reason why we have really anchored on serving customers with an Android device is because it has actually allowed us to utilize our alternative credit underwriting platform. And this is really, I'd say, one of our core strengths as an organization. Through a customer's device, we're able to sort of see device type and ID. We can look at the applications they already have installed on their phone, the operating system here. We can sort of put together behavioral data as they go across our ecosystem, and loan application answers. And increasingly, these 5 things are actually fully responsible for our full credit underwriting. This is really all, I'd say, at a very high level, really, this is all that's needed for us to sort of take a customer who has a 0 credit history and be able to essentially determine how much to lend to that customer. So as of today, the success of this model, we've since been able to provide over $2 billion in loans. We are operational in 4 markets. As I said earlier, we started in Kenya. We then expanded out to the Philippines, Mexico, and more recently, India. We've been able to achieve 90% lifetime repayment rate on all these loans, and now have served over 5 million customers, and we still believe there's tremendous opportunity that lies ahead. So I look forward to answering a few more questions that will happen, I'm sure, regarding our choice of this technology and the challenges that we face. But let me then hand over to some of the other panelists as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan. Just a quick one. Someone is asking, basically on the issue of transparency. How transparent are you? And how will, basically, do the customers have visibility on that level? Maybe you could clarify on that before we toss it over to the next.
Sure. Sorry, forgive the noise, a little bit of house repair going on in the background. We are exceptionally transparent. In fact, we're one of the few lenders that created a client data privacy agreement that's available on our website, even well before data privacy bills were passed across the world. In fact, this even preceded some of the GDPR that now serves as a standard for most markets. And as you download the app, you expressly have to give permission for different types of data. So the Google app will ask you, do you give permission for Tyler to view your contacts? Do you give permission for Tyler to view your SMS? Do you give permission for Tyler to view XYZ? So super transparent. Of course, we cannot tell clients exactly the magic source of how we use that data, or else we'd be exposed to fraud if people knew exactly the signals that we look for. But permissions are transparent, and we also have that on our website.
Great, thanks, Ivan. I don't know if Rose, you're back. Maybe just a quick brief about AgriInfo, and also, maybe tie it also to how you're using data to access, support to the farmers. I'll probably move it, to another dimension. We've looked at, how space tech is being leveraged to, to provide insights. We've also seen how, data from a credit perspective is being used from, on the fintech side of things. We're also now going to look at how data and analytics is being used on the healthcare space, and I'll just toss it to Simon, just to provide context on what you're doing with your organization, with partners on the ground, with community health workers, and also more about that conversation as well.
Thank you very much. My name is Simon Bai. I work with an organization called MEDIC, and MEDIC has been in existence for the last 10 years. And our main focus is largely trying to explore ways that we can be able to increase equity, health equity, particularly through building open source mobile and web technologies, targeting frontline healthcare workers, especially in hard to reach communities. We do this work primarily in solidarity with implementers and governments, and to try and find ways that technology can be able to support a new model of care that is integrated, timely, equitable, and of utmost high quality. I'd like to take you on a journey with me. So for a moment there, just imagine yourself as a nurse or a clinician who has patients, and you're interacting with these patients directly from your clinic through web and a two-way messaging system, ensuring that those clients or patients who need your care are able to get that care and to get it on time. I'd also like you to imagine yourself as a supervisor for a community health worker deep in that remote village. And being their supervisor, being able to leverage the data out of the care activities that they're delivering on a daily basis on a household level, to be able to provide data-driven mentorship, supervision through a mobile application. While at it, imagine yourself now as that community health worker who's using technology to be able to deliver care. And this care might include referral for services such as immunization for the under 5 children, diagnosis for pneumonia, diarrhea, and malaria for under 5 children, and we know that this is a leading killer, screening for danger signs in pregnancies right at the doorstep of these patients and individuals. These are just bad examples of what drives us as an organization. We're really fueled by the belief that these healthcare workers deserve better tools, and that those communities served by these healthcare workers deserve better care, and that there is no excuse whatsoever that this care should not be able to reach these households or individuals when they need it. Together with the partners that we work with across about 23 countries now, we leverage the availability and abundance of two very critical components, which is one, mobile phones, and secondly, the community healthcare workers. Our technology has been designed in a way that supports these community health workers and other frontline healthcare workers to be able to provide longitudinal care, that they can be able to register within the application, the households that they are within their catchment area, and that they can be able to register individuals or members of that household and be able to track them over time against the services that they deliver. It also has inbuilt care guides, which have accompanying them, decision support aids to allow them to be able to make decisions as to when I should refer a client for advanced care at the health facility, what kind of diagnosis I should be able to conduct and how to interpret the result of that diagnosis, as well as what kind of medication I should be able to give. In addition to that, it allows them to be able to consume the data that's a byproduct of the service that they deliver at the household level. That within a touch of a button, they can be able to see a snapshot of the demographics within their catchment area. That they can see how many pregnant mothers they have, how many of those have danger signs, how many children under 5 are fully immunized, and they can also be able to track their progress should there be targets set within that specific program that they need to meet over a duration of time, for example, monthly or quarterly. While scale is very important for us to be able to achieve reach, coverage, and impact, early on, we realized how quickly we needed to change tact and to redefine scale and to position scale for the person or for the place where it really mattered the most. This had a net effect on the technology and the way the technology has been built. And we've been able to build this with an offline fast functionality, meaning these community health workers, these frontline healthcare workers can still be able to work within last mile areas and be able to still deliver the most essential healthcare services and link these households and individuals to formal health systems. This is really technically challenging, or was technically challenging, but we know that it's absolutely critical for these communities to receive utmost good care within such a setting. Some of the lessons that we've been quickly able to learn over the course of our 10 years implementing this technology are, one, primarily that global health challenges are greater than any single one organization. And therefore, partnerships are very critical and central to how we deliver our mission. We've been able to democratize our technology and resources through what we call the Community Health Toolkit, which is an open source community, for us to be able to increase scale, adoption, and ownership of this technology. And more importantly, to not make the patients or the people who need this care wait for technology to be built from the ground up. The other thing that we've quickly noticed is the value of research and evidence, which is stimulating adoption of technology and reimagination of community health systems and more generally health systems within many countries. A good example is one of our partners in Mali called Muso, who is really building one of the fastest community health models within an outlier health system. And they have been able to use research and evidence to be able to influence government, to be able to, one, provide incentives for these community health workers who would have otherwise been working on a voluntary basis, adopt part of that technology to be able to strengthen part of the community health models. We're also seeing technology becoming very central in the reimagination of community health systems in countries such as Togo, Zanzibar, right here in Kenya where I am, Malawi, Uganda, just to mention but a few. Another thing that we've quickly learned is that leverage on what's already existing. Look at what is present within the hands of these community health workers, what is present within these nurses and clinicians in terms of hardware, in terms of any other infrastructure, and explore ways that you can be able to stretch the technology to work within what is already existing. And this further stimulates potential for scale, adoption, and as well as impact. Equally important to mention, within the same length of research and evidence, we are now trying to remodel the technology in a way that it can be able to support in prediction, and more importantly, in precision public health. That these community health workers need not only to be able to diagnose fever, but they can be able to be supported using data and data science to be able to categorize that fever for whatever kind of disease it belongs to. We can again be able to provide more equitable care, especially for those who are at risk of developing negative health outcomes.
Yeah, Simon, as we wind up, maybe you could also speak about how you are going around the issue of the infrastructure challenge, especially like in communities where there's no, access to good, internet or quality internet, just to be able to harvest the data from the site to maybe to some sort of, central spot as you finish.
Exactly. Thank you for that question. One way that we've been able to do this, and knowing that within these last mile communities, power and mobile network connectivity is a problem, especially internet. So one way to be able to resolve this is to build an offline fast technology that still allows these community health workers to be able to work offline and be able to maybe come once in a while within a link health facility to be able to synchronize data. A good example is one of our partners working in Burundi with about a network of 200 community healthcare workers distributed in very far-flung areas from that link health facility, but still being able to deliver care and looking for options to, complement the, highly inaccessible electricity using solar power to be able to keep their power, their phones fully charged, and to still be able to enjoy the benefit of working offline and coming together centrally twice a month to be able to synchronize that data, and also for in-service training and mentorship. Other ways that we've been able to deal with this issue is to find or explore ways in which the technology can still be able to work in very difficult situations, and finding ways to be able to synchronize that data. For example, having a healthcare worker from a link facility travel down with a modem or with any other kind of data enabled device to be able to synchronize those data points that they have been collected by the community health workers. So Daniel, these are some of the ways that we are trying to be able to beat the challenges around infrastructure, but knowing so well that infrastructure is very, very central towards the whole concept of leaving no one behind. And the challenge to all of us here is how do we, in our own way, leverage this clarion call of not leaving anyone behind. This is what we believe as an organization, Medic Mobile, that we all wake up every other day trying to cure an unjust state of affairs, such as lack of access to infrastructure, a lack of access to essential healthcare services. Over.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think what I've taken from you is, I think two of the major hurdles is, access to electricity, just to, to be able to power the hardware that goes hand in hand with, the extension service, and also access to internet. And the way you're doing it is through, having sort of flexible data pack that has an offline version, and also doing incorporating, solar technologies to, to serve areas without electricity. Yeah, exactly. So I think in that light, I'll just pass it over to Caleb Ndaka, who leads the Kids Camp, which is an EduTech solution provider that also supports young people to become computer literate, all the way from basic computer skills to hardcore programming. And I'll just ask him to pick it up from here and just provide more context and how they are leveraging data on the education space. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great. I will start. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. A very good morning from London this day. My name is Caleb Ndaka, and I am a co-founder at Kids Camp for Kids Computer Camp. And Kids Camp is an initiative to help children, especially children and families around those children living in rural communities, to catch up with the current digital-driven society. And our mission is that every child, regardless of when they are born or where they are born, they can have equal fighting chances to tackle today's digital-driven society and, really live to their full potential. In trying to achieving that, we believe in technology and we believe in education as a sure promise, a sure bet for us to achieving that mission of equity and equality. For our today's reflection, I want to share a challenge. I want to share an opportunity. I want to share a critique and then conclude with this point, which I will try to address it from those points. And the point is, forget about everything perhaps I'm going to say, but don't forget that build it and they will come running. Let's begin with a revelation. And COVID-19 has been a great pandemic, so per se, but it has also been a great revealer. And we're going to scratch this a little bit further. COVID-19 has revealed to us what our basic need should be. Beyond food, shelter, and clothing, which are important and basic, COVID-19 has reminded us that access to a device and a connection is increasingly important and basic. COVID-19 has also revealed to us who has access to these basics of life and who does not. COVID-19 has brought to our attention that a connection is no longer a privilege for a few, but a very basic need for all of us. And so as COVID-19 continues to reveal the deep existing and emerging inequalities, the question that I would like to ask ourselves today is, how can this new revelation of the new basics of access to internet really assist us to address all these inequalities that we are seeing in broad daylight? Now, in BC being before Corona, the World Bank noted that we were already in a learning crisis, what they called the learning poverty. 53% of low and middle income countries, children in these countries could not read or understand a simple story by the end of their primary school. And cumulatively, around 200 million children globally do not have the opportunity to go to school and learn about themselves, learn about their community, learn to be better citizens. But during DC, and DC here is during Corona, a research which was published in one of the Kenya dailies showed that 80% of children, especially those in rural communities, did not have any opportunity to be involved in any kind of remote or virtual learning, which was established to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. And sadly so, only 10% of kids in public schools had the opportunity to further their learning during the COVID-19. And so that's a big problem. That's a big challenge all of us we experienced. And so they say for every challenge, there is an opportunity behind it. And so the question is, what is the opportunity behind this challenge? And one of the biggest opportunities that I'll see is the fact that 70% of our population, for example, in Kenya and in Africa across, is young, energetic, and very creative. some scholars have termed this phenomena as digital by default. The fact that these kids are being born in a society where digital is not something for other people. Digital is what they know, is what they speak, is what they use every single day. And so as society, as an African community, we do have this opportunity to cash in on this digital by default youth population. And so the question is, how can we really do that? Allow me to share perhaps not one of the best examples, but one that I believe paints a very clear picture of the amount of potential we have among children and young people, and especially those in rural and underserved communities. In April in 2019, Kenya's Interior Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, banned betting in Kenya. And he cited these statistics that 76% of young people in Kenya are being involved in one form or the other of betting. And so being a Kenyan, I will tell you for sure that the trend has been young people borrow money from micro lending apps, and then they use that money to bet, and whatever they get from the bets, they go to repay the micro loans, and it becomes like a vicious cycle, which is very dangerous. But this is what I actually take home from that not very good scenario. Most of this betting is being done on mobile apps, which have some sort of connection, right? And at the same time, we seem to have a very difficult time teaching our young people in school on digital literacy. But in the streets of betting, young people seem to take these digital skills almost in real time, and they're cutting it like wildfire. What does this teach us? What does this tell us? It is telling us that our young people have the capacity. It is telling us our young people have all it takes to learn on their own, given we create conducive environment. And this is the point that I'm trying to make, that we need to build connection to our young people. And when we do that, they will come, and they will come running, and they'll make the most out of that. But today, as we talk about internet connection and the need to push it to the last mile, we should also not be naive to the critiques of people who have offered to devolving technology, especially to rural communities. And one of the critique has been, does it really make sense for us to give a device and a connection to a child who does not have food or who does not have a classroom? A very good question, and a fair critique, if you may ask me. But my opinion and my work of working with rural communities for the last 6 years, I will tell you that part of the solution is working hand in hand with rural communities to establish the right context to implement technology and the right priorities to implement technology. Actually, somebody said that it is no longer about a top-down or a bottom-up approach. We need a partner-to-partner participation with the local communities that we are working with. And so to conclude all this, I will say that internet technology is a wonderful resource to our young people in rural communities. But at the same time, we have to face the critique in a more sound and holistic way. Yes, COVID-19
Caleb.
Yes.
I think I'll just ask you to reflect on that, because what you're mentioning is quite interesting. You're saying, we've been investing in brick and mortar, and even, until to date, there are some places that don't have that, infrastructure. But you're saying also by investing in digital learning infrastructure is almost as equal to investing in a physical classroom, because you've said that young people are still picking up digital skills elsewhere, maybe from betting or other aspects of their lives, but they're not using it in the right way. So I would say, that's interesting. Maybe you could just provide more context on that, and as you wrap up.
Yes, and my point there is a point of I would like to see communities as the basic infrastructure. Let me explain that further, such that the biggest challenge we have right now is not just the physical infrastructure, but is community as infrastructure. It's teaching the teacher how to best implement technology in class, is teaching young people opportunities that they have within their community to use technology, for example, to start businesses in their very own communities. I think the conversation that we've had before is mostly about the brick and mortar alone, and not in right context or in right priority in local communities, which has brought forth to all this mismatch that we are seeing. Yes, so that is my view, is focusing on people first, focusing on community first as the primary infrastructure, and then now building everything on top of that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, focusing on communities. And I think, once we get to the breakout rooms, that's when we'll, dive deeper in terms of, how best can, technologies being leveraged at the community level to, to bring that sort of, a merger between the top down and the bottom up approaches. I don't know if Rose, you're back on. Maybe just a quick 5 minutes from your perspective as an agri-tech.
Yeah, I'm back on, but my internet is still very shaky. So
yeah, I'll just ask you to. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So I'll say basically what we do is to enable smallholder farmers using their mobile phones to use our information to make decisions that support their and optimize their operations on the ground. We do that by collecting data. The kind of data that we collect is basically the farm, the GPS, where it is, but then also we fly over it using a drone, on which we use a sensor on that drone. And that sensor does collect information regarding the reflective energy of the sun. So it collects the strength of the energy that is being reflected. And we analyze that energy and we come up with maps that we actually call them NDVI, the index maps. And those maps tell us what is the health of the crop. And we can accordingly now advise that farmer on their plot, on what part of their plot, because we have the GPS data, to how much fertilization they should put in that place. What is mostly important is this kind of information we collect is the type of data that we collect is data that cannot be seen by naked eyes in a way that the spectrum that our sensors do capture in the invisible spectrum. So this is information that even if you are at the farm, you will not be seeing that by your naked eyes. So that is one. And the second thing is to be able to now translate that data to a way that an agronomist can now communicate an advisory services directly to this farmer. And what we're looking forward is to extend that to satellite, to double between the drone and the satellite, but then also to have it translate into the fintech, because one of the major cry is how farmers are financing their agribusinesses. And this information is lacking to most of the finances. So we're looking to translate that to them. So basically that's what we do.
Yeah, no worries, Rose. I think as we just prep for the breakouts, I'll just ask Abdallah just a quick question on that, what point Rose has mentioned. I know you're saying, space tech data can be used to support agriculture. Maybe are you seeing any learnings from your perspective in Sweden, and what can be applied from in the context of Africa? I know you had mentioned something around cooperatives and the like. So maybe just a quick 1 minute comment around that, and just to tie it with what Rose has mentioned.
Thank you. Great job done by Rose and her team, I think. What it could be interesting to combine both the drone like data collection with satellite image collection, because if you talk about large countries, sometimes the teams will be like limited to like a specific geography within the region or in the area they are from. I'm talking about cooperative, because the majority of farmers in the continent are smallholder farmers who own like a small piece of land. For them to offer like ag-tech solutions, sometimes could be like not meeting their bottom lines. So the solution we saw it in other parts of the world, that cooperative could buy a service in a sum lump from the service providers like the ag-tech companies, and then distribute it to their farmers. And that could be in a link with like teaching and incorporating the like new practices within their frame of work. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think you're spot on in that. Our approach has been working with paddy and irrigation schemes, because again, when you use drones as well as satellite, you need farms that are connected and not separated in small plots. So cooperative is one approach, but then also irrigation schemes is also another approach as far as crops like paddy are concerned.
Great. I think we're already seeing some form of synergies where different dimensions of technologies can be used, and even different spaces in terms of sectors can support different communities. So what we are going to do in the next 15-20 minutes or so, we are going to go into 2 breakout rooms. The first breakout room would be moderated by Christine, and our able panel that will join us would be Rose, bring her perspectives of the agri-tech space, and also we're going to listen from the perspective of Tala in terms of how financing is being leveraged, and are there synergies in which data can be, or technology can be leveraged further beyond what we are seeing in these spaces. I know access to capital has been a major challenge. I think Rose had mentioned during the preparation that you would possibly want to see more more access to more ways in which farmers can use the data you're gathering from drone technologies to focus on that. And also, Abdallah will also join in that conversation in that breakout room to provide his perspective on, basically what he's seeing and what can be done. The second breakout room would be focusing more on the human aspects. So we'll be looking at from the, what we've learned from what is happening in EduTech and also from healthcare. So Caleb and Simon will be part of it, and I'll be, joining. And what will happen is we're going to randomly assign our guests, and also feel free to engage on that platform from the perspectives of what you're seeing in your communities. I think, Caleb, you mentioned a very important point around communities being the basic infrastructure for these innovations. So how can we use data at a community level to provide these cross-cutting linkages? So I'll ask you just to, I'm sure you'll be getting, each of you will be getting prompts just below on your screen. Just click on the join button for you to be able to join the the respective breakout room that you've been assigned. And let's keep the discussion within the 20 minutes, and then we'll regroup just to to tie it all together and just see how we can build on these innovations. Thank you.
Thank you so much so far for the participation and the good presentations from our panelists. We just want to pick up the conversation and also have a more engaging discussion with the participants to hear their views about the different applications that we could have beyond what is currently there in terms of data usage, because data is the new gold. And so whether it's data that is coming from being collected from satellite imagery, how can we apply this data that is being collected from downstream tech in agriculture, or just basically to solve other social needs that we have in Africa, and also explore, for instance, let's say in the fintech space, how can AI and credit algorithms reach out in a more effective way, in different ways. So for instance, maybe serving SMEs in a more affordable and, for more services to reach them. So kindly allow me to start by engaging the panelists. Let me put Ivan on the spot a little, just to let us know. So if I am not able to access a smartphone, but I need these financial services, and I'm in the underserved population, how are you going about that? And then also just let us know.
Yeah, maybe Christian, you could maybe wrap up in terms of what you're seeing in what was the conversation as we end, and I can give a final wrap up. You're on mute.
So in our discussions, we just delved a little bit deeper in terms of understanding how the drone technology is being used, and how it collects data. And one of the interesting points that came out was getting, the main stakeholders on board to use this data. So the financial service providers, the insurance companies, for them to to adopt this into their risk modeling structure, so that we can improve rural financing. And also looked into possible ways in which fintechs can be able to assess how the loans they're giving out are being used, and that are being used for useful purposes. And so one of the key areas that came up was that they would need to diversify their portfolio in terms of getting more targeted and customized credit scoring tools and products that can use specific data sets for for instance, for rural financing. Yeah, so that's what I would say, what came out from our group.
Yeah, great. Yeah, just a quick one on what came out of our end. I think we saw technology can be leveraged as a hybrid for crossing the bridge between education and healthcare. We even had examples of EduTech partnerships with universities and healthcare partnerships with universities. So there's an interface within which young people and universities can also be trained and also provide both education solutions in parallel to healthcare extension support, and that's already happening, but more has to be done. We also had even context from an impact investor around they actually grade well technologies that are amiable to to 2G and 4G, on these technologies that can work even in the context of lack of internet, so that they are able to reach more communities, so that scores well in terms of impact. So whenever we are looking at technologies, let's look at it broadly in terms of even those who cannot afford and have smartphones. So I think, in the interest of time, sorry, we shot up by 4 minutes, but I think it was a very interesting discussion, and if should we wish to get connections to some of the speakers and build on these conversations to leverage partnerships, we would be happy to facilitate that. So a good afternoon from the rest of us, and have a good day.